Good evening, one and all. Or good evening, nobody. No one's watching right now. It's Gordon Candy the Wonder Pup always shows up. It is right now 12:31 a.m. on Thursday. Make that Friday the 23rd of June. And to keep Candy happy, it's her treat. Lay down. Speak. Come here, Paul. Come up. There, Candy will now give me some peace. I have my coffee. I wanted to talk about the passage of Bill C-18 in Canada. And the impetus led me to do this video is Michelle Rempel Gardner, who is a member of Parliament for Calgary, so a federal politician with the Conservative Party of Canada representing Calgary. She just did a Facebook Live video saying that the vote is happening right now, when she put out the video, on Bill C-18, and that it is going to pass, and that it is going to be sent to the Governor General for what is referred to as Royal Ascent, which is a rubber stamp. And so Bill C-18 is about to be codified in law. And the way she references it, the way she refers to it in her video, she calls it the Google Facebook News ban. And effectively, that is what it is. It will preclude, it will prevent individuals such as myself, yourself, anyone from online. The way this bill was sold to Canadians is that I read a CBC News article, I like it, I want to comment on it and share it, so I post it to my Facebook timeline, click, I hit send, and then my network of people watch it, and maybe some of them share it out, and it disseminates that way. Well, the government is selling this as a means to protect Canadian content because going forward, Google's, Facebook's will be required to pay the content provider. So if you share a news article from CBC, then Facebook or whomever would have to pay would have to pay CBC or whoever the art, whatever news story is being shared, they would have to pay that entity. And Google and Facebook have announced they will not. They're not going to be paying for people sharing news content. And so they're simply going to censor it. You're not going to be allowed to post news links to your Facebook feed. And in her video, she expects Twitter and other platforms to follow suit. And this is troubling, disconcerting, and dangerous because it's just another step toward totalitarianism. And we're on this road where Justin Trudeau and his government are marching Canadians into a totalitarian system, and controlling news information is vitally important to totalitarian systems. And you can go back to China currently. They control the content that its citizens are able to consume. Russia did it with their TASS news agency. Franco did it in Spain, and of course the Nazis did it in Germany. It's a totalitarian system where you want to control the medium, and you can control the message. And in Canada, most will be aware that the federal government already is paying. They already have, the news outlets are already financially beholden to the government, because Canada doles out somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 million a year to what are typically referred to as legacy news outlets, Global, CTV, and other Bell Media global outlets, Toronto Star, Globe and Mail. They complained to the government that they weren't able to compete with the internet. And so the government has basically thrown them a lifeline. Well, you want to stay in business here, we'll give you some money now. He who pays the piper calls the tune. And they will, as we've seen repeatedly, journalism has gone in the toilet. The mainstream legacy media, journalism has gone in the toilet. There's only one side of a narrative presented, no questioning. It's just parroting whatever the government says. And I want to give an example of as to why this is significant and as to why this is vitally important. And I'm going to go back to October of 2021 and show how responsible media impacted public opinion and impacted government and media. What happened in October of 2021 is that Dina Hinshaw, who was the head of Alberta Health Services, their chief medical health officer, she was holding a press conference. And during that press conference in October of 2021, she announced that the province of Alberta had just had its youngest ever COVID death, a 14-year-old. Now, she did mention that the individual had serious underlying health issues, but still it was a COVID death. And she actually got grief from doctors over the fact that she said that the patient had serious underlying health issues. CBC News article quoted an Alberta emergency room physician as saying, everyone's got comorbidities. If I died, they would say I'm morbidities. Yeah. And why did they make such a big deal out of this 14-year-old's death? This was just prior to the authorization of the COVID jabs for children. So it was a great marketing ploy. It was a great way to sell and sway public opinion in favor of injecting children with the COVID jabs. And that's an opinion, but a firmly held opinion. And that would have been the only story anyone would have heard had Bill C-18 been in place at that time. But it wasn't. And what happened is that young man who had died, the 14-year-old, his name was Nathaniel Spitzer or Spitzer. I don't know how you spell or pronounce it. It's spelled S-P-I-T-Z-E-R or S-P-I-T-Z-E-R if you're an American. He had two young sisters, or two sisters, actually. The sisters were older than him. So this young man had two sisters, and they complained to Alberta Health Services, and their complaints fell on deaf ears because they knew their brother had not died of COVID. I'll tell you his real cause of death in a minute. So they complained to the legacy media, to the CBCs, the CTVs, the globals of the media marketplace, and they ignored them. Their complaints fell on deaf ears. Then they went to a publication called the Western Standard, which is an alternative media outlet based in Alberta that does not receive funding from the government. They don't get part of that $400 million that the government doles out. And they listened and they published the story. Nathaniel Spitzer had not died of COVID. He had terminal stage 4 brain cancer. He was in, I always have trouble pronouncing this word, palliative care, end of life care, where you're typically on something like a morphine drip, and the object is they know the patient is dying and is going to be passing away soon. So the idea is just to keep the individual as comfortable as possible during their last days. And 2 days before this child, before his fully expected and fully they knew he was going to die. They subjected this child to a PCR test, what I refer to as a nasal colonoscopy. Rammed an applicator up his nose. I've never had it done, but I've had people tell me that it's incredibly uncomfortable. And to do that to a child who's already dying to begin with is absolutely disgusting. And if you read a New York Times article from August of 2020, they said, if you ramp the amplification cycle high enough on the PCR test, everyone tests positive. And so it strikes me, they probably ramped it up as high as they needed to get that positive result so that they could announce that this young man is fully expected passing so that they could blame it on COVID and use it to market, sell, convince, coerce parents into getting their children inoculated, injected. If Bill C, the reason what happened was the Western Standard ran that story, and then I saw it. Lots of people saw it, and we shared it. We shared it to Facebook, to Twitter, to Telegram, to Parler, to all these different platforms. I myself am not on Telegram or Parler or any of these others. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and pretty much a little bit of Reddit, and that's it. But anyway, it got shared and it blew up, and everyone realized, geez, the government's, they're blaming COVID for a kid with terminal stage 4 brain cancer. Give me a break. And so now they had to do damage control. And Dina Hinshaw released a statement, and it was, she said it was a mistake, that it was an error in judgment, that they were removing this death from the COVID death totals. And we made a mistake. We made an error. That's what she says. I say something else, 2 words, bullshit. She knew exactly what she was doing. Alberta Health Services knew exactly what they were doing. And so they were forced into damage control. And the CBCs and the CTVs and the Globals of the world, that's what they played up. Oh, well, they made a mistake. They made an error. No one took them to task. No one hit them with any hard questions, because our media are lapdogs now. There's no journalism in this country. Not from the mainstream, not from the legacy outlets. Certainly not from CBC, which is a government-owned, it's like TASS was in the old Soviet Union. It's a government-owned agency. We'd always make fun of TASS, or we'd look askance. Well, of course, that's state-owned media in the Soviet Union. You can't. Well, if you want state-owned media in Canada, watch CBC. Oh, but we're not biased. Yeah, TASS said the same thing. TASS used to say, oh, we're not biased. Our journalism has integrity. We're not beholden to the government. Sure, you're not. Western media doesn't have a TV station. They rely on social media platforms to share things out, and the effect of Bill C-18 and Facebook determining that they will no longer are going to comply by not allowing the sharing of news links means that story doesn't get heard. And so the government then is able to ensure that the messaging we get, control the medium, control the message. It's the way totalitarian systems roll, because then there's only one narrative. Everyone can fixate on some submarine somewhere, forget everything else. We're going to devote 15-20 minutes of our news coverage to this one story and ignore Hunter Biden being convicted of I think tax evasion or something, and all these other stories that are going on. Can ignore them, and everyone fixate on a submarine. Tragic. If everything is as it was reported, it's tragic. But there are tragedies every day. It's not, it certainly doesn't warrant that degree of coverage. But, I don't get to make that determination. I can share out on my Facebook feed the news that I think has significance and importance. But going forward, once this bill receives Royal Ascent and Facebook prevents me from being able to share news links, and then it gets worse because the language of Bill C-18 would allow, the government says, oh, we have no plans to do this. We have no plans to. But as we've seen with our government, what they say they have no plans to do, they later end up doing. Well, things changed, they'll say. And the language of the bill will allow them to not just censor news content, but as well to censor what is typically referred to as user-generated content, meaning my video here, or your video, or your what you're posting, or what I'm posting. Those who follow me on Facebook know that I have a tendency, I'll sometimes write a novel, sharing my thoughts, views, and opinions on any number of subjects, LGBTQXMLNOP, and all the rest of it, or, whatever. Well, if that does not meet the government's approval, you're sending out information which the government does not want sent out. This is not authorized news. Only the government can authorize the news. This is the type of system we're moving toward. I'm not there yet, but we're moving decidedly in that direction. And right now in Canada, go to Health Canada's website, and you'll see that over 85% of Canadians could now be considered vaccine hesitant, because according to Health Canada's official advice, if you have gone 6 months or more since your last COVID shot, you need to go in, make an appointment, and get boosted. But over 85% of Canadians have either never had a shot or have stopped and have not had one within the last 6 months. And they're ignoring the advice of Health Canada, which is telling you every 6 months. Now, why? Why? Because we saw Dina Hinshaw lying about the death of a 14-year-old. Because we were told these shots will provide long-lasting and durable protection against both infection and transmission. And we were told, and we were told, and we were told so many things. We were told that absolutely definitively the virus SARS-CoV-2 came from a lab, or rather came from a bat in a wet market in Wuhan, China. We found out that was a lie. They have never been able to find SARS-CoV-2 in nature. And they censored, deplatformed, and slandered highly respected and accredited scientists, including a Nobel Prize winner, who looked at the virus and said, this shows all the signs of being human created. It's been bioengineered. This came out of a lab. That was censored. Now we could still get that out. I could still share an article with Dr. Geert Vanden Bossche, is one of the world's leading vaccinologists, and I've shared his stuff out. I'm not going to be able to share that anymore in Canada. There will only be one narrative allowed, only one view allowed. And I could tell you about the way that the Soviets used this type of power and control in the old Soviet Union. The KGB got caught planting bombs in apartment buildings in Moscow, which they had been blaming on Chechen rebels in order to build support among Russian citizens for their war of invasion against breakaway republic Chechnya, well, you wouldn't get to know that. You only get to know what the government wants you to know. And this is freaky and this is scary. And I don't have any good news because it's only going to get worse. It is only going to get worse. Totalitarian systems push more and more and more. It takes an extreme. China has never, they did their great leap forward under Mao Zedong. They haven't gone back. The Soviet Union basically had to collapse on itself. They went bankrupt after their invasion of Afghanistan. And that caused their system to collapse. Franco was in power forever in Spain, right into the 1970s, 80s. Of course, Nazi Germany, that system wasn't defeated, and it took a world war. This is the path we are on. And as I say, it is going to get worse. And there's a reason why it's being rammed through now, because stuff is coming. You can watch back I did a video with 3 predictions, and I'll update it really quickly now. Number 1, I predicted that sometime this summer we would have the declaration of a climate emergency or a war on climate. Then number 2, come the fall, we would see the emergence of a new variant of COVID or perhaps some other dire health threat. I see that happening in the fall. And then toward the end of the year, I see an escalation of either the Russian-Ukrainian war or outbreak of another war, perhaps China and Taiwan, maybe the Middle East, who knows. And the way I can see this, if I was scripting this out, if I was with the WEF and I was mapping this out, I would wait until later in the summer to declare the climate emergency. And I think there'd be a lot of pushback on that. I think there are a lot of individuals like myself who are fully aware of the fact that climate changes historically. This planet has gone through periods of warming, cooling. I've laid it out in previous videos. Medieval warming period from about 950 AD to about 1350. It was about 400 or so years long. Medieval warming period, temperature shot right up. The ice sheets, you look at a satellite image of Greenland, it's basically one big sheet of ice. Big sheet of ice rolled back to such a huge degree that the established settlements, permanent settlements there. They basically colonized Greenland, and they were able to do that because of global warming. And their settlements thrived for 200 to 300 years, but then a period of global cooling happened called the Little Ice Age, starting in and around 1350 AD to 1400. And then the planet went through what was called the Little Ice Age, and there were all manner of catastrophic weather events during that period. That lasted into the 1700s, some say the early 1800s. And since that time, we've been in a warming period. So we've had a medieval warming period, the Little Ice Age. Now we're in this period of warming. It'll be followed by a global cooling period, assuming that the pattern of, it's cyclical and it happens. But now it's been politicized. And anyway, and a lot of people are aware of this. A lot of people are not buying into they're not buying into this idea of a global climate emergency. So declare it late in the year and see how well your suppression of alternative views is going, and then bang, hit everyone with a new variant of COVID or a Marburg virus or goodness knows what. And now we got two fronts. And then an escalation of the war with everyone being told, we've got to be all behind Ukraine. Come on, everyone get on side. And we'll be playing whack-a-mole, and we won't be able to communicate with each other except face-to-face, person-to-person. But the ability to find and disseminate information that runs counter to what the government is authorizing and approving, the official news from the authorities, the ability to do that will be severely diminished. So it's a dystopian Orwellian future I'm mapping out. And the only thing I can say is forewarned is forearmed. I honestly do not think there is anything that can be done about it. In my previous videos, I have said it and I'll say it again. This battle, it's a battle between truth and lies, between good and evil. It's a spiritual war. It's a war of principalities. And it's get on side with the author of all truth. And I'm talking about Jesus Christ. Because in him, victory is assured. If you want to put your faith into any other being of this world, you are going to lose. You're going to be disappointed. Donald Trump, Pierre Poilievre, Robert Malone, whoever. No one of this earth, Joe Rogan, forget it. No one of this earth is going to win what is ultimately a battle of principalities. So I've kept it under 30 minutes. I don't want to ramble on too long. I see I've had two people watching. I'm going to click on the video. It says chat disconnected. Wow. They took off my chat. Chat disconnected. Please wait while we try to reconnect you. Unable to connect to chat. Please try again later. I will, after I post this video, I will post a link to Michelle Rempel Gardner's Facebook video if you want to watch her talking about this passage of Bill C-18 and what it means. She's suggesting that you subscribe to her an email list so that she can disseminate news to you that way. I have not signed up for it. I get enough information as it is already. But anyway, thank you for watching. Sorry the chat wasn't working. Goodness knows, maybe this is all part of it. Who knows? Things are going to get worse. So 28 minutes, less than 29. God bless everyone, and thanks for watching. Night now.